Stories always at least have two sides to them. And there's also a possibility of duality in personalities. Just like that, the KTM 250 Duke has always been a bike with a dual personality. For example, it's a KTM, but also mild-mannered. Sounds contrasting, right? But with the 2024 iteration, the 250 Duke has become more than a mild-mannered bike and similar to other Dukes. But the question here is, has the contrasting two sides changed with the new update? First up, just look at what the new 250 Duke looks like. Pretty, isn't it? Now there are some obvious styling elements borrowed from the 390 Duke, but some things like the body-colored headlight shroud and the fuel tank extensions make it stand apart. It is more aggressive and louder than before and will definitely grab a lot of attention. However, the same loudness tells a different side of the story. You see, you might love the design now, but a year or two down the line, you might grow out of it and then find it a bit too loud.
One of the most fascinating things about the new 250 Duke is just how premium some of the components are. For example, the switchgear is more premium than any other bike in this segment, and it is the same as the 390 Duke, and even the quality of the panels is pretty solid. However, more often than not, you will find massive panel gaps that when seen up close rob the charm of the bike.
A new engine is what the 250 Duke gets with more power and more torque. What this has done is revamp the experience of the performance, and it is more exciting than before and aligns with the KTM DNA. Unlike before, this 250cc engine is a lot more engaging and happier to sit at the higher end of the rev range. It is peaky, so easy to pull at higher speeds and higher RPMs like the 7000 RPM mark. Sure, it isn't as crazy as the 390 Duke, but it still brings a hooligan character to this bike. Now the other side of the story is that due to its peaky nature, the lower rev range is not that exciting. You see, at city speeds and under the 5500 RPM mark, the bike feels okay, not something with an aggressive character. And the most important bit is that beyond the 4000 RPM mark, it feels really buzzy, and that only smoothens out a bit after the 6K mark. What all of this translates to is a pretty easygoing but buzzy performance in the city. But when you take it out on the highways and the twisties, that is where you and the bike will enjoy yourselves. You can even maintain speeds of above 110 kmph quite easily. Oh, even the tractability is pretty decent and smooth enough for daily commutes in the city traffic.
The 250 Duke is the only 250cc bike in India that gets a Quickshifter, and it works oh so efficiently. The gearbox in general too is a breeze to use, offering smooth and crisp shifts every time. There is one thing though, the clutchless shifts are extremely smooth after the 3000 RPM mark. Before that, it can get a little notchy.
Another thing inspired from the 390 Duke on this bike is the new trellis frame with the aluminium subframe. The new chassis setup complements the exciting nature of the new bike and makes it a much better handler than before. The first thing that you would notice riding this bike is that it is so eager to tip in and dive into corners. You will feel like a kid on a sugar rush. It is lighter than before with saved unsprung mass thanks to the new lighter alloy wheels and brakes borrowed from the RC390 and the new 390 Duke. What this does is aid in attacking corners and inspiring confidence while doing the same. But the flip side to that is, the rear tire is not that grippy and can step out while carrying fast pace on corners. That is where the confidence gets pulled down, and adding to that is the slightly softer suspension tuning at the rear, which makes the bike wobble while leaning at fast speeds.
But again, the suspension tuning overall is something really practical for daily usage. One thing to understand here is that the suspension isn't very plush and you would still have to mind yourself over big bumps. But small undulations, broken patches here and there are something that you can just pass over without thinking twice. Overall, the braking performance is pretty adequate on the new 250 Duke. It takes a little bit of time to get used to, but the bite on both ends is pretty decent. However, there is some room for improvement. Interestingly, you get a Supermoto ABS mode where you can switch off the rear ABS for sliding.
Now the duality in personality is most felt in this part. You see, at least for me, the upper body riding posture is quite comfy and something I won't have an issue with riding all day. But when it comes to lower body, you can see just how cramped someone above 6 feet like me can be with completely tucked in legs. The most troublesome part is that after a few hours of riding, it will start hurting, and I can attest to that. The good thing is that people under 6 feet of height might not really face this issue. Lucky.
For the features, you get a neat and simple LCD console with important information right in front of you. And controlling the console is pretty easy too, with the switchgear on the left hand side. You also get Bluetooth connectivity and turn-by-turn navigation, and you can control the music and the volume of the songs playing on your headset as well.
So finally, in most things about the new 250 Duke, there are two sides to the story. Even my conclusion feels the same way. You see, it is a lot better and more exciting than before. It definitely is something for people looking to associate with the KTM brand, but don't want to invest in something as intimidating as the 390 Duke. And obviously this is a lot more practical in everyday use than the 390 Duke. And even with the updates, it hasn't received a significant price hike, which makes it a pretty sweet deal. But that is what the other side is, that a Rs 2.4 lakh price tag is a pretty hefty ask for a 250cc bike. And there are other powerful alternatives like the Triumph Speed 400. So what becomes of the KTM 250 Duke is that it will attract a niche group of riders who want something that's decently exciting and a street fighter, but not something that would scare them. Having said that, stay tuned to ZigWheels for all things automotive and do not forget to subscribe.